moments in our politics where something happens between two countries, two nations that have lived side by side, traded together, defended each other's borders, shared a continent in peace for longer than most alliances in human history. And you realize we may be crossing a line we can't easily walk back from. What happened between the United States and Canada in the last 72 hours is one of those moments. And I want to talk to you about it, not with the heat that cable gives you, not with the spin, but with the kind of honesty that I think this situation demands. Because what's unfolding right now isn't just a trade dispute. It's a fracture in the most successful economic partnership the modern world has ever produced. And the choices being made on both sides of that border are going to reach into your household, into your grocery bill, into the cost of building materials and farm equipment and everyday goods that Americans depend on. So let me walk you through exactly what happened, why it matters, and what I think is coming next. Because if you understand the details, you'll see this a whole lot differently than what a 60-second cable segment can give you. Let's start with how we got here. The United States and Canada don't just trade with each other. They are woven into each other's economies in a way that most people don't fully appreciate. Nearly 72% of Canada's goods exports go to the United States. And we're not talking about luxury items. We're talking about energy, raw materials, auto parts, agricultural products, the things that keep factories running and shelves stocked on both sides of the border. For decades, that relationship was governed by trade agreements. First NAFTA, which I signed in the 1990s, and then the USMCA, which was negotiated during the first Trump term. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, no trade deal is perfect. Canada does have protectionist policies in certain sectors. Their dairy supply management system is complicated. Their provincial liquor boards have restricted American alcohol in ways that are genuinely frustrating for U.S. producers. Those are real grievances, and any honest conversation about this has to acknowledge that. But here's what matters. We had a framework for resolving those grievances. We had a process. We had the USMCA. And what's happened over the past year and a half is that instead of working through that process, we've watched it get dismantled piece by piece through unilateral tariff actions that have now escalated into something neither side may be able to control. On July 20th, President Trump signed 3 proclamations invoking Section 338 of the Tariff Act of 1930, the Smoot-Hawley Act, to impose 50% tariffs on a range of Canadian goods. Now, I need you to understand something about Section 338, because this is where the story gets really important. This provision has never been used to impose tariffs before. Not once. Not by FDR, not by Eisenhower, not by Reagan, not by me, not by any president in the modern era. The Congressional Research Service confirmed it earlier this year. Section 338 may have been referenced as leverage in negotiations back in the 1930s and 1940s, but no president has ever actually pulled the trigger on it until now. And the tariffs it authorizes are the maximum allowed under that statute, 50%. They cover 554 Canadian tariff lines, roughly $20 billion in annual imports. We're talking about cement, furniture, clothing, dairy products, wine, hockey sticks, fishing rods, and here's the part that should concern everyone. These tariffs apply even to goods that qualify under the USMCA. That's a first. In previous rounds, USMCA compliant products were carved out. That protection is gone. The administration argued that Canada discriminates against American autos, alcohol, and dairy compared to what it offers other trading partners. And I'll grant you, there's a kernel of truth in the auto argument. Canada's retaliatory 25% tariff on U.S. automobiles does single out American products without applying the same burden to imports from other countries. That's a legitimate trade complaint. But here's what I keep coming back to. Canada's retaliatory tariffs exist because we imposed tariffs on Canada first. We started this cycle. And now we're using a 96-year-old law that's never been tested in court, that has no implementing regulations, no judicial precedent. We're using that to escalate further. That should give every American pause. Now, I care about the people who watch these videos. I genuinely do. And I know that if you're here, you're someone who takes this seriously. You want to understand what's actually happening, not just get a headline. But I'm going to tell you something directly. What you're getting from cable coverage on this is not enough. They don't have the time or the incentive to dig into the real numbers, the tariff lines, the sector breakdowns, the timeline of what was offered and what was rejected. The Blue Bill newsletter does. It lays out the kind of detail that changes how you understand a story like this, and it takes about 5 minutes. I read it myself, and I'm telling you, go check the Blue Bill newsletter. Because if you don't have those details, you're only seeing half the picture. Here's where things went from bad to worse. The tariffs were set to take effect on August 19th. Hours before the deadline, President Trump paused them for 3 days. He went on social media and said, and I'm paraphrasing, that subject to the finalization of documents, the United States and Canada had a deal. Prime Minister Carney confirmed that intensive discussions had been taking place and that substantial progress had been made. For about 48 hours, it looked like both sides might find an off-ramp. And then, late Friday night, last night, it fell apart. Carney suspended the negotiations. He called his negotiators back to Ottawa. He said that last-minute changes in the American proposed terms were, in his words, unfair and uneconomic, and that they called into question the reliability of any deal. Now, I want to be fair about this. We don't know every detail of what those last-minute changes were. Carney referenced the auto sector and Canada's ability to maintain other trade agreements. He said Canada had been willing to drop its remaining retaliatory tariffs on steel, aluminum, and autos, and to encourage provinces to put American alcohol back on shelves, but that Washington's final demands went too far. His words were, they asked too much and offered too little. And at 12:01 this morning, the 50% tariffs went into effect. $20 billion in Canadian goods are now subject to those duties. And Canada has announced it will retaliate dollar for dollar, with its own tariffs taking effect September 8th, targeting American steel, dairy, appliances, agricultural equipment, pulp and paper, and electronics. Let me tell you what concerns me most about this. It's not just the economic damage, although that damage is real and it's coming. It's the institutional precedent. When I was president, we had disagreements with our trading partners, serious disagreements. But we worked through established frameworks. We used the WTO. We used bilateral negotiations within agreed upon structures. We didn't reach back 96 years to a Depression-era statute that has no regulatory framework, no court precedents, and no established process, and weaponize it against our closest ally. Because once you do that, you've told every trading partner in the world that the agreements they sign with the United States can be overridden at any moment by a law that was written before most of them existed as independent nations. You've told them that USMCA compliance doesn't protect you. That's not leverage, that's unpredictability. And unpredictability is the most expensive thing in international trade because businesses don't invest in countries they can't rely on. Now, I understand the political argument for toughness. I do. There's a certain appeal in standing up and saying, we're going to get tough with Canada. We're going to make them play fair. But toughness without strategy is just chaos. And right now, what I see is an escalation cycle where both sides have made public commitments they can't easily back away from. Carney told the Americans in advance, if these tariffs land, we stop negotiating and we retaliate. He did exactly that. The American Trade Representative said publicly that he would not tolerate retaliation. Both sides are now locked into positions. And as one trade law expert put it, that's how escalation stops being a choice. Now, the details of what Canada is retaliating with, the specific sectors, the numbers that are going to affect American producers and American households, you're not going to find that on any cable network. They don't have time to dig into these numbers the way they need to be dug into. The Blue Bill newsletter had this with details you didn't even know existed. The tariff line breakdowns, the sector by sector impact, the timeline of what was offered and rejected in those final hours. The people reading it right now are not caught off guard by any of this. If you want to stay ahead of where this is going, that's where to look. Let me tell you what I think happens next. And I want to be honest, I don't think the short-term picture is good. September 8th is 2.5 weeks away. That's when Canada's retaliatory tariffs hit American exports. And here's the political... September 8th is 2.5 weeks away. That's when Canada's retaliatory tariffs hit American exports. And here's the political reality that I think both sides are calculating. The United States has midterm elections in November. American consumers are already frustrated with the cost of living. Imposing 50% tariffs on $20 billion in Canadian goods, tariffs that are paid by American importers, not by Canada, and that get passed along to consumers through higher prices. That's a political risk heading into an election season. On the Canadian side, Carney has staked his credibility on standing firm. He's built his political identity around not backing down to American pressure. And the provinces, most of them are still holding American alcohol off their shelves. That's a retaliatory measure that has real symbolic weight. So you've got two leaders on both.
I think we should fight. I think Donald Trump is very weak. I think America is weaker around the world today than it was a year ago. He's about to get slaughtered in the midterms, and the cost of living is the #1 issue, and he is completely out of touch with the cost of living of Americans. I think we should fight. I think we've got the upper hand. They're back on their heels right now. They're coming to us for a deal, and so I think we should fight. We are in a position of strength. They are weak. They are getting beaten up. He's the least popular president ever because of the cost of living. So again, like, we can make these changes that the Prime Minister is asking, but who are we making this deal with? Do we expect that this is going to be the end of, like, Donald Trump is all of a sudden going to say, oh yeah, I'm not going to bug Canada again? He's erratic, he's irresponsible, and he's not to be trusted. And this is a person that we were supposed to make a deal with, and we're going to make additional concessions for. That's why I say you can't make a good deal with a bad person, because who's to say it's not going to be undone? So with that in mind, we reserve the right to take the U.S. booze off.
Good morning. As you wake up and drink your coffee, know that we have now entered a trade war with Canada while you were asleep. Yes, you heard that correctly. We are beefing with our northern partners. Canada suspended all trade negotiations with the Trump administration late last night at like 1 in the morning. Why? Because Canada says that Trump was bringing unfair economic practices and terms into their trade negotiations. So what happened now? There is a 50% tariff on $28 billion worth of goods coming in from Canada. And Canada says we're going to match that dollar for dollar to protect Canadians. Canada, one of our closest allies, literally right on our border, is now in a trade war with us. We currently have higher tariffs on most Canadian goods than we do on goods coming in from countries like China. It's a big slap in the face to the Trump administration and to Donald Trump because he claimed that we had to deal with Canada. Guess we didn't. So as I wake up this morning, because I slept 3 hours as my little 5-month-old daughter woke up every hour on the hour last night, I want you to know, and yes, she's laughing, I want you to know that this is no laughing matter. And in fact, we're now in a trade war with our closest ally, or I guess former.
Everybody knows the American president by now. He's erratic, he's irresponsible, and he's not to be trusted. And this is a person that we were supposed to make a deal with, and we're going to make additional concessions for. That's why I say you can't make a good deal with a bad person, because who's to say it's not going to be undone? Do we have to cheerlead? Do we have to play to Donald Trump's ego? No, I don't think we do. I think we should point out how irresponsible.
Here's the part people don't like hearing. Donald Trump has actually done more for Canada in the last 3 days than our own government has done in the last 12 years. And hear me out. Trump gave Canada 3 days to get a trade deal done. And that deadline expires in 2 hours. And just look at what we're hearing could actually be on the negotiating table. American alcohol finally being restocked on Canadian shelves. Canada could remove retaliatory tariffs against American vehicles. And my favorite, there's also reports that Bill C-18 could be scrapped, meaning we could potentially see Canadian news returning to Meta. There's negotiations around digital rules and dairy, and Trump's also brought the Keystone XL pipeline back into the conversation. Now, obviously, Trump isn't doing this out of charity. He's negotiating for his mandate, America First. But that's actually what makes this so interesting. Because while Trump is trying to get a better deal for Americans, some of the pressure he's applying could actually unwind Canadian policies that a lot of Canadians didn't want in the first place. And Canada could potentially get lower tariffs on steel, aluminum, and autos. So after all that elbows up talk about Canada needing to stand up to Trump, are we about to end up with a better deal because Trump actually forced everyone back to the table? We got 2 hours left. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Tell me I'm wrong.
But another moment also raised eyebrows. Trump endorsed Darlene Graham despite her previous comment about national security. And that brings up a bigger question about the US politics. Her loyalty become more important than competence in American politics. Former President Bill Clinton has also been commenting on the political climate, raising serious questions where American politics is actually heading to. And as we move on to 2025 midterm election, voters are already paying close attention. The economy remains a major concern and political approval. The economy remains a major concern and political approval ratings are under pressure. Some Trump endorsed candidates have also suffered defeat in their primary races. But let's be clear, None of this means we already know what will happen in 2026 election. Politics can change quickly. The real issue is what voters will demand from their leaders. Do they want candidates who simply follow the party line, or do they want leaders who can think independently, make tough decisions, and actually deliver the results? Because the 2026 midterm will be about more than Donald Trump or the Democratic Party. Be about the economy, immigration, national security, leadership, and the future direction of Americans. So here is a big question. Will Donald Trump influence continue to dominate American politics, or will voters start demanding something different? Obviously, I think voters, their eyes don't see shaggy. They will obviously do the needful. We will have to wait and see. And remember, this is commentary. I am not supporting any side. I am simply breaking down what was said and also what it could mean. So tell me what you think in the comments. Do you believe political loyalty has become more important than competency? If you enjoyed this video, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notification. We are going to keep on bringing the biggest news about American politics. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more updates.